Alright, we are back here with BackWordz. We had just another interview, check it out in the description, all about their music, and we talked about how hard it is to be a libertarian within the music business, but these guys have made it. But now I want to talk about something else that is becomes closer and closer to my heart. Mm-hmm. So when I became the CEO, I was talking like a lot at events, and I was realizing that there are very few black people at these events, you know?
Right.
Like everybody talks about like, oh, how do you get more women in the liberty movement, but very few talk about like minorities.
Right.
And so I wanted to address that more, and I'm trying to fundraise to get like a staffer who just focuses on reaching out to historical black colleges and universities. Because I believe the ideas of liberty are for everyone, and they can really help black communities.
Absolutely.
And they're very entrepreneurial, right?
Absolutely.
But I've talked with many people now, and I would like to talk with you about that. What do you see as like the main problems that libertarian ideas or white people like me have in really making a good case for the ideas of liberty?
Right. I mean, it's really more so at the starting point. I mean, a lot of these people, I grew up in a lot of these same communities. Typical, definitely when you talk about a lot of these black communities, single parent household. We talk about, I grew up gangbanging, doing a lot of, nonsense, been in and out of jail, doing just a bunch of silliness. And it was very, 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 very important, for me when I became a libertarian to kind of funnel that message to that crowd, to let them know the beauty of liberty. You know what I mean? And a lot of these things, we talk about what the government does. We were discussing backstage and kind of how the Democratic Party has a political kind of monopoly on a lot of these communities, definitely when you talk about minority communities. So it's all about making them, or kind of funneling that message to them in a way that they understand what's immediately impacting them. And it's hard. I'm not going to say it's not difficult, but I look at things. I think the most important thing and the most detrimental thing, a lot of black libertarian thinkers, Thomas Sowell, Walter E. Williams, have talked about like the welfare state and the dangers of it. It's been packaged to a lot of black folks and minorities that it's a good thing when it essentially incentivizes people really to fail. You know what I mean? And we look at the trends in which the expansion of the welfare state, and now we have like 90% or so black babies being born out of wedlock, and stuff like that, which really kind of it's intergenerational poverty is really almost what it's creating. So it's about funneling it to them in a way that they more so understand it, because they adopt, like we talked about this backstage as well, the entrepreneurship. They adopt that idea of capitalism. Definitely when you talk about like rap culture and stuff like that, they love money, right? So I mean, we're capitalists, you know what I mean? So it's all about making them extend that to the logical conclusion. And I think it's like that with whoever you're going to market to, but I think definitely minorities specifically, and making them understand and extending a lot of what they even already advocate in the entrepreneurship, and having them kind of again, extend that to the rational conclusion, and they would be, libertarian. They recognize, some of them now start to recognize like the dangers of the drug war, and then we kind of say, all right, why is that a failure? Apply that to things like the welfare state, which Democrats have been telling us that this is such a good thing, when it's really keeping them exactly, where they're at. And me personally, I always talk about the historical aspect, because a lot of black folks like to talk about that, and I've been, done a lot of, research and history on, and it's really, you don't need all of that to understand that the federal government, governments in general, the state in general, has been the core kind of deal when you talk about black kind of oppression, so to speak. You know what I mean? So I like to highlight that, because they will turn around and go, vote for somebody that's going to expand the state. But I like to talk about, the slave, like the Fugitive Slave Act, and the slave codes, the black codes, Jim Crow laws. So all these Supreme Court cases which upheld all these ideas, like Plessy versus Ferguson, and Dred Scott, v. Sanford, all of these that upheld these ideas of slavery, and which essentially said that you as a black person were never supposed to have rights. You're not supposed to have. It was the government really mandating and essentially upholding and endorsing, racism. So I try to package it to them like that and saying, well, this is the tool that has been historically used to oppress black people. It doesn't really make any sort of sense to really advocate for the expansion of it.
So when you talk to people, like to your friends, like for the first time about libertarian ideas,
right?
Like if you say, like, I'm a capitalist, like what are the prejudices that they have in their minds?
Well, again, it goes back to leftism and the kind of monopoly that they have on these ideas in which they perpetuated. This nonsense that said that capitalism is a bad thing, to try to apply it to slavery. And again, going back to Walter Williams, he said, like, by definition, as far as what capitalists actually advocate, slavery is incompatible with that. That's an offensive to anybody that loves liberty, because it's essentially the forceful use of one person to serve the purposes of another. That's the antithesis of actual capitalism, which is the free and voluntary exchange of private goods, and services. So you gotta kind of break it to them and break through to them and make them understand that, well, what you've been told, kind of that unlearning kind of process. Capitalism is not bad. In fact, it's what black people have historically used to get them out of poverty and out of these situations.
Right. Thank you so much for everything what you're doing. Like, I've been trying to reach out more to these communities, and it's good that we have people like you to strive for the same goal.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Big time.